Hello, folks. My name is Paul Philosage. I'm a town engineer, currently the acting Public Works Director. Thank you for coming to the Westside Drive Area Improvement Neighborhood Meeting. We're at a juncture here where we thought we needed to come back to you folks to get a little bit more idea of what you folks would like for sidewalks out on this project. So from the town, I'm here, Paul Philosage. Jay Perkins will be here, I assume, shortly. And from the consultant side of things, Underwood Engineers, we have Dan Rochette, the technical leader, and also Cole Melendi that will be administering the presentation, and he's the senior project manager. Let the presentation happen, and then at the end we'll have time for questions, and if it's on a specific slide or something, we can always go back to that slide also. So why don't you go ahead and start, Cole.
All right, thank you, Paul. Thanks for having us here tonight. It's been a long time coming. We haven't been in front of you for, it's been about a year now, although we've been talking with everyone in the neighborhood. Looking forward to getting this project going. The design is moving forward. And so tonight we're going to review a little bit of the history, talk about the project's components, the goals of the project. We're going to look at some schematics that we touched on back when we last met with y'all, and then talk about next steps and schedule, and then have questions, public input at the end. So we want the feedback. So this is a project area. It comprises Westside Drive, basically the perimeter road and the interior roads, and then the junction out to Front Street. This project has been a long time in the making. It started back with the phase 3 infiltration and inflow evaluation. It was identified as a high II area with, in particular, some pumps going to the sewer, but there wasn't a great alternative for it. So we've been talking about trying to find a solution for that as part of the CSO long-term control plan in 2017. And then back in 2022, was the last time we met. We did a basis of design for the neighborhood improvements, and it was really the feedback from the residents that helped identify what is needed in the project. So thank you for your input. And also it went to the town warrant in March of this year for construction. It's funded. We're advancing the design. You saw some wetlands flags and surveyors out there last fall. So thank you for everyone's support. I guess I'll leave it at that. So we've been trying to solicit input all along the way. So we had a questionnaire and online survey back in 2020. We presented the findings of those, the questionnaire and survey in 2020 in the fall. We came back in the fall of 2021 to show a couple of roadway concepts, and Paul alluded to that at the beginning here. Basically a perimeter sidewalk or no, and that's the fundamental question we're trying to answer tonight. And then some neighborhood info letters that went out with the in advance of the survey. Can't appreciate everyone's cooperation more. There are flags in some people's yards. We got nothing but positive feedback from the surveyors and the wetlands delineators. So thank you for everyone's support on that. So the main components of the project are stormwater improvements and sump pump mitigation, also water main replacement. There are aging water mains, corrosive soils. It's part of the water asset management plan. But tonight we're really here to talk about the roadway improvements, and in particular the pedestrian accommodations. So when we met back in, I think it was September 2021, we talked about two alternatives. But the fundamental consideration of the project, of the improvements, is a reduction in the impervious area. There's environmental benefits. There's about 50 feet of paving in the streets for the most part. That's almost as wide as a 4-lane highway. So there's environmental benefits to reducing the impervious area. There's nitrogen and phosphorus and other contaminants that go to the environment. So reducing that helps improve that. It also improves the drainage. There's just less drainage water that we have to deal with to help mitigate some of the drainage problems that were identified in some of the previous public information meetings we've had. It improves aesthetics and also traffic calming. But tonight we're really here to talk about the pedestrian sidewalk considerations. So this is alternative one, has a perimeter sidewalk, basically around 28 feet roadway with a sidewalk. That's alternative one. It's similar to what we presented back a year and a half ago. And then alternative two has a sidewalk by the corner in the near the entrance of the site where sight distance is tough. We've been out there marking out things, and cars speed right around that corner. So we thought it would be good, at least at a minimum, to have a sidewalk there to help for safety reasons.
Hey, Cole, can I just pause you there for a second? It
Sure.
was the sidewalk area is shown in red on these drawings. Is that correct?
Yeah, so sorry, can people see my cursor? Are you able to see that?
Yes.
Okay, we'll do it this way. So the red is the sidewalk, basically, and what we show here is a perimeter sidewalk around. We did get one comment already to this alternative, and we can talk about that at the end. So that's alternative one, and alternative two is more green area and the sidewalk at this corner here where there's where the sight distance is tough. So that's alternative two. So alternative two includes 28 paved roads, sidewalk just at the entrance. We touched on that. We may need a little bit of curbing. It's pretty flat. The neighborhood's pretty flat. We may need some curbing in certain areas just to make sure the drainage goes where we want it to go. This alternative provides the maximum flexibility for stormwater treatment. And it's, and for a lot of reasons, that's one of the reasons why it's the town's preferred alternative. So we also wanted to touch on some of the things that go into the roadway design, just to, I guess, a look behind the curtain a little bit. So one of the things we're looking at and actually advancing is reestablishing the road grading and profile to help improve drainage. This is an excerpt from, this actually was one of the work plans we had in one of our previous meetings where it really became apparent that stormwater was an issue. So these were some of the things that the feedback that everyone provided made us realize that we need to improve the stormwater management out here. So one of the things we do is we provide defined low points. So if we look at this plan here, there's a lot of places where the water just doesn't have a place to go. So what we do is we redefine the roadway profile to get the water to flow where it needs to go to get out of the street. Another question that's come up along the way is alignment. So if we're going to reduce the pavement, what does that really mean? And the intent is to center the reduced pavement limits within the center line of the existing roadway. So we wanted to show a couple of different examples. Dan, help me out. Which one is this? This is on the upper side of the road, or is this lower?
This is actually the it's the upper side of the road. I think you're looking at between is it Tilton and Scammon?
Okay, so these are the two alternatives that we're looking at. The upper view is where we have the sidewalk, the perimeter sidewalk, and the lower view is where we don't have the sidewalk. The sidewalk and the roadway, the combination of the two, the intent would be as best as possible. There'll be a couple tweaks here and there, but the intent is to approximately keep the existing center line and use that as our basis. We'll get back into it. We'll talk a little bit more. So here's a conceptual schematic of the preferred alternative. This is alternative 2. So this is the area by Scammon and Tilton. So this is actually on the other side of the view that we were looking at. So what we show here is what this would look like. So the approximately maintain the center line with the new roadway. What we see here, those are the existing paving, approximately where the existing paving is, so that where the roadway is reduced, it would then turn into shoulder and I guess green area. We've got the reduced paving area. So this is traffic calming. So if anyone has gone, I know I drive on 101, and when they're doing work by the toll booths, when you're coming into a narrower construction area, you just naturally slow down. So with the kids in the neighborhood, it's the reduced paving area where you have 50 feet, it feels like a highway. So it helps with safety. We call that traffic calming. So that's a benefit too. The driveways and walkways would be extended to the new edge of paving. And then the other benefit of this is it provides expanded turf areas. This reduces the impervious area and also provides areas for stormwater treatment. Part of this project is partially funded through New Hampshire DES stormwater SRF funding. The town is regulated under the Great Bay Total Nitrogen Permit. And what we found through that whole process is that a lot of nitrogen actually comes from impervious areas. So stormwater treatment has become more and more important. And, one of the goals is to incorporate that into this project. So that's most of what we've got to talk about tonight. We really want to try to get feedback about whether or not the perimeter sidewalk. We'll talk about Lori King. She sent us a note. We'll mention that about having the sidewalk on the Pearl instead of up around, I guess the upper left-hand corner of Westside, because that's where most people travel. So it'd be good to have a sidewalk there. But we want to get the feedback on the town's preferred alternative 2, which just has a sidewalk in the lower corner. If you want more information, this is a link to the website, or the town's website. So high level, we're designing it. You saw some of the things that we've been working on with the design, the roadway profile. We're advancing that, but really what we want to do is try to pin down the sidewalk and pedestrian approach tonight. And by September, our goal is to have a 60% design that incorporates the consensus of what we come to tonight. Stormwater basis a design report, and then come back with you with some plans in September around that same time frame. We'll try to do it after kids are back in school and people's lives are getting back to normal, and then complete the design in September, bid it in the winter, and start construction next year. So that's a high level schedule. I think we're on track. Contacts, Paul and myself, feel free to call us, reach out. If you have any questions, it's honestly a pleasure. When we're walking around the neighborhood, people seem really excited, and I guess I'm excited to see this through. It's been a decade in the making. So I don't know if I should stop sharing. It's strange just looking at a screen trying to talk to people, but I'll do whatever people want. Maybe I'll keep it up if we want to go back to slides. What are people's preferences?
Well, Cole, I got a question first. This is Paul. And this is for Dan or for Cole. The sidewalk, when you construct it, can you talk a little bit? Are you thinking curb? Are you thinking what are you thinking for sidewalk construction?
Why don't you take that, Dan?
Yeah, so as far as the sidewalk goes, the curbing would be a vertical 6-inch reveal curb. So the top of the curb would be 6 inches above the edge of the pavement, and then a 5-foot wide sidewalk would extend from the curb. And I believe the sidewalk material would be asphalt, if I remember correctly, Paul, in our previous discussions.
Yes.
So it would be edge of the roadway, granite, a vertical granite curb, 6 inches in height, and a 5-foot wide asphalt sidewalk.
Well, thank you for that. Also, there was previous discussions of 24-foot wide roads in some areas. And we thought because we're already reducing the width of the road that we settled on, we'd like a consistent roadway width throughout, because some were different sizes. And we settled on 28 foot. And I think some of the newer subdivisions in town would be along the 24-foot wide roadways. But in these two concepts, we maintain a consistent 28 foot wide road. And I think I'm understanding that correctly.
Yes, Paul. So here are some schematics. These are slightly different than what you saw. Previously, we showed 24 feet here and the 5-foot walk, but we've got 28 feet, 28 feet. So this is option one with the perimeter sidewalk. So one thing that Lori King, she sent an email, one of the things we'd want to look at if this alternative is the preferred alternative, it would be to extend the sidewalk on La Pearl instead of Westside, just because this is the main path that the vehicles go for safety reasons. But this is the town's preferred alternative for a number of reasons. It provides a maximum flexibility for some of the other challenges the town is facing with nutrient removal and stormwater improvements as part of their permitting with EPA.
Okay, and let me just follow up with one more thing before we open it up to the questions. And I see there's a few in the queue. The next neighborhood meeting after we decide the general layout here, that would not be a Zoom type of meeting. That would be more of an in-person one so that people can come up and see what type of improvements are going to be in front of their or proposed to be in front of their parcel, and they can have a little bit more intimate discussion with you on what's going to be out in front of their house. And that's in September-ish area timeframe. Yeah,
so that one, Paul, we would anticipate we'd have the whole 60% design set with us. Find everyone's house. If we'll take a look at the plans, we'll roll them out. It's been strange. That's how we've done these things in the past. So it'd be great to be able to do that again and talk to people in person and find your house on the plans and let us know your concerns. You'll see what we're thinking of, and it's early enough that we can, adapt. So that's why we want to do it early enough in the process. So we make sure, do the best we can to have everyone happy with where we land. So,
all right. Do you guys just want to read off the questions and answer them, or how do you want to do that?
I can't figure out if somebody can read them. I don't know. I'm just looking at the screen, so I'm a little bit of a Luddite here. I can maybe stop sharing, or how do I?
I can try to read through them, Cole, and then we can field them, because I have them up here.
Yeah, that would be good. I think it'd be good to have if we want to look at the plan, look at any of these slides, it might be good to keep that up.
Yeah. I'll do my best. I'll admit I'll do my best with some of the names. If I mispronounce any of the names, I apologize in advance. The first question we have is Kathleen Garofano. And the question is, will this get rid of the water in the backyards?
I would have to know a little bit more about where Kathleen is. We are, the improvements for the project are basically what you see here. There will be some, we don't have all the drainage plans so I guess I'd have to know a little bit more about where she's talking about.
I guess I could say in general, I think the one of the, and Cole, if I misspeak anything, I'm kind of new to the project, but one of the primary goals is to improve the drainage conditions that are out there. So we may not necessarily get rid of all the water, but we will mitigate, I think we will mitigate a substantial amount of it. A portion of the project is installing a new closed drainage system. And I believe we are extending drain services to the property lines. And that'll provide people with the opportunity to connect sump pumps that may be just discharging directly out of your basement into those lines. Hence, providing a place for the water to go that may just now be collecting in the backyard and whatnot. So when we're done, it should be improved. It may not all go away, but it should be improved.
Yeah, and I guess I add to that, Dan, the reduction of the impervious area also helps with drainage. If we're going from 50 feet to 28 feet, there's a reduction of stormwater that needs to be, that is, I guess, available to pond in the roadways and the backyards, depending on where you are.
The next question is from Joe Gardner. Please clarify the mention of grass/gravel. Is gravel really a potential option?
Well, gravel, so the gravel part is the shoulder. So the intent is to replace where we're eliminating paving. So the way a road works, and it's not apparent here. When you drive around the road and you see, and say the town overlays it, the paving will be up and you'll see soft shoulder or something. It'll stick up like an inch or two from the paving, and then the town will come back and put gravel in. That gravel actually helps hold that paving up so it doesn't I guess fall into the side of the road. So the intent is to have a 1-2 foot wide gravel just to back up the paving, and then the rest, what you see here is green, would be restored with loam and seed like a lawn. Is that fair, Paul?
Yeah, that's correct, Cole. And the pulling up the shoulders with gravel after the overlay example that you gave stops edge cracking and that sort of thing, preserves the pavement. Plus, anybody that pulls off of the edge of the road and then goes directly into loam on a rainy day, you'll start having mud fairly easily right there. And that doesn't help the road situation either.
All right, next question. Scott, let's go. Can you explain again why alternative 2 is the town's preference? Is it financial? Seems a full sidewalk would be safer for residents to walk around the neighborhood with the reduction on street width.
Yeah, I can answer that. Previous neighborhood meetings, there was quite the percentage. It seemed like they did not want to have sidewalks, but they were used to the wider road situation, and it seemed to be split. And so if there is less sidewalk to maintain or to construct to start with, that is cheaper. If there's less to maintain, that is cheaper still. And then as Cole talked about the impervious areas, calculating into additional nutrient runoff into the water bodies, there's advantages that way also. So that's why Public Works sided on the lesser than more sidewalk. But we're still having this meeting here to find out what the residents prefer also.
And then, sorry, was there another? All set. And Diane, let's go. Can they coordinate with residents with regards to redoing driveways as well?
I mean, Dan, you can maybe, it's redoing driveways. There's going to be a part of the apron, I guess what we call the driveway apron, would be part of the project to tie the driveways to the new roadway, the driveways and walkways. Let's see, maybe I can, let's see, will be extended to tie to the existing. There may be a little bit more that has to happen. You know, we want the grades to work with the driveways and walkways to tie into the new pavement edge. In other projects, so I know, Dan, in your Portsmouth projects, the contractors on site have deals on the side, but that to pave their driveway while they got the equipment there, or maybe do some other work on the site. But that would be something that would be outside of the scope of this project, if that makes sense. Hopefully I didn't say too much, Paul, but that redoing an entire driveway wouldn't be borne by the cost of the project. I guess I'd put it that way.
Yeah, that's correct, Cole. Though we would only do the tie-in as necessary to complete the transition to the improvements you're doing out in the right of way.
All right, Sharon Center. Could you please address the shrinking of the road versus no sidewalk? Generally, residents walk on the street and don't use the current sidewalks because the road is wide. I'm trying to project how that change would look, i.e. less roadway, no sidewalks.
Well, I guess this is probably the best representation that we have to try to show that. It's not a huge, when you look at the road, we're going from, it'll be about 10 feet on either side, give or take, where there'll be grass instead of paving. It's more consistent and wider than most of the neighborhoods in town. So it's about 10 feet on either side. That's the intent, to try to maintain the existing center line. I don't know, Paul, do you have anything to add there? It's hard. I don't know exactly how to describe it or what. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess this gets at what I mentioned early on. Folks were used to walking into the road out here because of the lack of sidewalks, and this project with the goals was manyfold, and part of this is pedestrian access, and you can still use the road in the for walking for the alternate number 2. And the shrinking of the road also allows for some of that other the stormwater improvements, whether they're swales or actual constructed components, to have room for those to be constructed also. So the choice is out there for the community whether they would want the sidewalk to go around the perimeter, or if it would be continue to use the road and only have it where we heard loudly right at the entrance there at previous neighborhood meeting.
So one of the things we talked about too is when I think about walking around my neighborhood is sometimes, you know, in a residential neighborhood, this is sort of a dead end, not a dead end neighborhood, but it's not a through road. People like walking on the streets anyway. The traffic is light enough that it's more enjoyable in some ways to walk down the street, and then when the cars come, you know, go to the side a little bit rather than being funneled on a sidewalk and have the curb there all the way around the road. So that was one thing that we talked about with DPW, just trying to think about like our own lives and how, you know, when I'm walking through the neighborhood, we walk in the street and the car comes along and we go off to the side. So that was one of the things we talked about in coming up with a preferred alternative.
Okay, next question. I'll say Diane L, because I know I've been mispronouncing that one. Will the town continue to maintain the sidewalks throughout time? They have not in the past.
Well, if the sidewalks were constructed, yeah, the town would maintain those. During snow removal and stuff, I've got to say sidewalks are at the end of the storm. It is not the highest priority, and but they would be plowed off as the rest of town is, and so they get the main thoroughfares first, and then they would hit the individual neighborhoods afterwards.
All right, thanks, Paul. Sharon Center with I guess a follow-up question with the driveways. Also, if driveways need to be extended, does the town pay for this?
Yeah, let me take that one, Cole. You see with the slide that you have up, some areas that have brown where you got to reach on out to the new edge of pavement, and the town would do that and connect to existing walkways and driveways.
All right, next question's from Walter Hellison. Could you speak a little more to the grading? A major reason we have this issue is that after the last rebuild, the grade of the road increased by as many as 6 inches in places, sending the water into our basements. Will the new road be at or lower than the current grade? I can probably speak to this one a little bit. So we are going to go through and essentially redesign the road, both I guess I'll say horizontally and vertically. So we'll go through and look at all the grades on the roadway, and Cole has the screen up here. So I'll say that the top left picture is we designed the road in profile view, so we make sure we have proper low points to direct the runoff and stormwater to the catch basins that'll be installed. And then on the bottom right, we have we look at cross sections of all the roadways. So we'll draw a cross section typically every 50 feet and at all the driveways to make sure that the grades that we're proposing either end up in the road, the water ends up in the road as to the best that we can, or stays in the road and doesn't go into the yards. So we do look closely at all this stuff to make sure that we're doing the best that we can to keep the drainage moving and the water in the roadway.
So I'll add to that, so that so we typically do this at every 50 feet. So every 50 feet of road, it's one of the tools that we use are these cross sections on the side. So when you see the dash line at the top, that's the existing grade and then the proposed grade. So in this case, it's lower. So the one right in the middle, that 22 plus 14, that's just stationing to know where we are along the road. That's actually at a driveway. So at each driveway, we draw one of these cross sections, and it's the tool that we use as engineers to know, all right, we're not going to be sending stormwater into somebody's driveway. So that's one of the tools that we use. So the dash line, if you're looking at that, that's the existing grade. And then the dark boxes that kind of look like a little bit like a V, but that's the proposed grade. The dark line on the top of that box, and then the bottom is the gravels and whatnot.
So for a more complete answer, you don't know right now whether portions of the road might be a little higher, or in the instance that you're pointing out here, it's lower, but you're doing this so that you can put appropriate pitches on both the profile and the cross sections, so that stormwater goes to a place that you can handle it better instead of onto people's lawns and stuff.
Exactly. So we'll go back to this drawing. So we see all the yellow. So those are places. So how we design the road is we build little ups and downs, right? Water flows downhill. So part of roadway design is we build little ups and downs to get the water out of the road and to the drainage system. So over time, the road settles. So what we say is it loses its profile, and then that's why you get these ponding areas. So what we would do is reconstruct those little ups and downs just enough to get the water to go, and so that it goes to the drainage areas. But yes, Paul, you're correct. The one that we looked at here, this is a cut section where we're a little bit lower. There may be others where we'll be a little bit higher, but in general, we like to match our cuts and fills. So, we try to follow the grade as much as possible. Just enough to get the water to flow and get out of the road, so we don't have this situation is the intent.
All right, George Kellaway has, I guess he labeled it as more of a statement. No one uses the sidewalks. Most are grown over due to lack of care. If no sidewalk would become owner of green space, I'm assuming he's asking who becomes the owner of the green space in the statement.
Well, the roadway right of way is the roadway right of way. But the green space, so whatever's in the right of way is technically part of the road. But in this case, there'd be more lawn. At my house, there's my front lawn is lawn, and it's in the road, but I mow it like it's lawn. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Sharon Center, once construction begins, about how long will this project take? I guess I would say that it's pretty early to put any sort of timeline on how long construction would take. It ends up being dependent on how much piping we're proposing, sidewalks, whether or not those go in and whatnot. But you could definitely expect more than likely a full construction season to get this project done once it starts. And I'm sure some finish work would linger into the following season. So if this were to start in the spring of next year, 2024, you'd have a full season's worth through probably November or so, and then there'd be some final cleanup and maybe some final paving the following season, spring spring of 2025.
Yeah, one of the hard things that's been, it's been a real challenge, I would say, the past year is materials. So, there are times waiting on water pipe, it can sometimes take a year just to get some of the materials. It's starting to get a little bit better. I'm cautiously optimistic that, we're out of these supply chain issues, but we're still seeing it on some of the, just getting the pipe can be a challenge. So it's something we'll know more at bidding. It's something that we would define as part of the contract documents. And it's been ever changing, I would say, for the past 2 years on the availability of materials. There's nothing too rare that we're proposing here in terms of the size of the water in the pipe. So I'm cautiously optimistic we won't have too many material delays, but it's too early to be able to say that for sure. But I think what Dan said is fair. There's always a little bit of cleanup the following year. We usually want to let the paving, we'll do a base coat of paving. You want to make sure the final paving, is follows that. So I would say plan on, 2 years, but hopefully that second year isn't we're just doing cleanup. Is that fair, Paul?
Yeah, I was thinking it was going to be, as Dan was saying, a full construction season, and then for substantial completion probably, and then the final completion the following year with tidiness and finished paving. And we have been experiencing quite the supply issue on previous jobs. Also, mostly it was the water mains and stuff that was holding us up. Not so much the sewer pipes, drainage pipes, and structures. It was more the water, and we can build in the specs that we can accept, so that we can accept different types of pipe also. Go ahead, Dan.
All right. I guess Kathleen provided her address, so we'll just note that. I think that'll show up in the list afterwards. She was at 71 Westside Drive. Next, Sam Ostroff. For a frame of reference, I was wondering what the road width is on Oak Street, which was recently redone. My concern is a safety issue of a road that narrow. On Oak Street, there is a sidewalk on one side, and when a car is parked against that sidewalk, 2 cars traveling in opposite directions cannot pass at the same time.
Yeah, that roadway width on the Oak Street that was just had a very similar project to it is 24 feet wide, and at a similar neighborhood meeting, it was the neighborhood that had asked for that sidewalk on Salem Street to be and Oak to be constructed. So 24 foot wide on the other ones. What's being proposed here is a 28 foot wide road.
Another question from Sam. I also wanted to know about the connection of sump pumps to the sewer main, which I understand to be done at the owner's expense. Do plans have individual connection to each house?
Let's go back. So the intent of the project, let's see here. So for the interior, for the interior properties in particular, the intent is to provide, we don't have those plans. I think we had some of those schematics and some of the previous ones, would be to have a drain service at the edge of the right of way. That would be the homeowner's responsibility to ultimately connect, either run a hose over the lawn when you're running it, or sometimes bury it. I know we've done it in Portsmouth. The intent with the houses on the perimeter would be there's enough grade to discharge your sump pump out the back of the house. That's the overall approach right now. But the drain service would be terminated at the edge of the right of way. So it would be the individual's responsibility to connect to it. But the town wanted to provide, an alternative, recognizing that if you're currently have your sump pump to the sewer, if you put it in your yard, you're really just putting it in your neighbor's yard. So that's the intent, is to provide a good outlet for it to be consistent with the town's long-term control plan to avoid CSOs to the environment.
Yeah, and right now there isn't a component of doing work on private property. We have had a couple of projects that we wanted to remove the inflow and infiltration from the sewer system. That a special program of replacing or providing an outlook on private and providing a alternative of how to get rid of sump pump water in houses was undertaken. So right now there is no such component in this. There would be a process of soliciting the town to see if there would be a will for the people to participate, and then whether the town would offer up some work and funding mechanisms to do work on private property or private services. But right now, the service connections for like the drain line situation would end at the property line.
Yeah, and I think I would just add a clarification. The question did read connection of sump pumps to the sewer main. Sump pumps should be, and I think ultimately have to be connected to the drain line, and not the sewer line.
Well, and I think in that project that you referred to, Paul, that there was a lot of problems with the sewer itself. In this case, we've done some TV. We're going to do some more of the TV. The sewer itself is PVC, relatively newer condition. So the sewer is in fairly good shape from what we've seen so far. And the intent would be these new drain services are in addition to provide that outlet for the sump pumps.
All right, next question is Phil Stagnon at 15 Westside. We have a walkway from the existing road to our front door. What material will be used from the new road to our existing walkway, which is stone dust and large pavers?
I think the intent would be to try to match the existing. Correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, but I guess that's my inclination. Try to match the existing materials. It might be there might be certain instances where it's challenging.
Yeah, no, Cole, we typically don't do that because there could be 30 different types of connections to be made. So we can review this when we get to the 60% design here and look at the individual lots and make a determination of what we would be doing. So most of the time it would be some sort of asphalt, but we could put a brick or a brick paver component in there. But I don't want to necessarily have 12 different types of situations going on. Or we could do the prep work for the homeowner to match it too. But I'm talking a little bit out of turn, but let's look at that at the 60% design level, and make note of the walkways that tie into the road, so that we can have that specific conversation with residents at that time.
All right, thanks, Paul. The next question is from Diane L. I think it's kind of a follow-up to the road widths. Is the gravel, I'll say, is the gravel shoulder that we described part of the 28 feet? And the gravel shoulder would be in addition to the paved width. So it would be the paved width of 28 feet plus 1 or 2 feet on either side of gravel shoulder, depending on what we decide on. Next is from Joe Gardner. Is Exeter or the homeowner responsible for the sidewalk in front of their house? And I think he's kind of asking about, looks like maintenance item, cracks from tree roots and snow.
So the answer to that is no, the homeowner is not responsible for it, but that does not preclude somebody from taking care of it, though.
David Walker asks, apologies if this has already been asked. If sidewalks are constructed, will they be cleared of snow in the winter? And I think Paul, sorry, I was just going to say, if I remember correctly, was the town would do the best they can to get to them to remove the snow, but it would depend on roadway clearing and available resources.
Correct.
All right, next we have John Kelly. Paul, will the town take care of moving the residents' mailboxes?
Yeah, I think we should include that into the project. If we're relocating the roadway, we would relocate mailboxes too. I don't want to get into a situation where we have requirements for granite mailbox posts and stuff like that, but the town can be relocating mailboxes.
Marshall Stephen, are all the streets in the neighborhood of same width? Asking because that may need to be taken into account if shrinking uniformly. Sorry if I missed that early on. And yes, the intent is for the proposed street widths to be maintained throughout the entire neighborhood, which right now we're proposing 28 feet of pavement. George Kellaway, it's not lack of sidewalk. They just don't use them here. Street width would have nothing to do with it. Even on the main roads, people don't use them in this town. So that looked like that was more of a statement. So next one is Nicholas Metz. What are the plans for the current fire hydrants? Will they be moved closer to the roadway?
So typically there's a detail, and it's a certain width from the edge of road, and those would be adjusted, and those would be moved with the water main construction.
See here, Marshall Stephen. Marshall, I believe we addressed your question. I meant to ask if the streets in the neighborhood are of the same width at all points. Will this be taken into account with shrinking? I think most of the,
I think what he's asking, Dan, is are all the roads 50 feet? And they're slightly variable, but they range from the measurements that we've taken. They range anywhere from 45 to 50 feet. So the goal would be to maintain that 28 feet centered on the existing center line. They're not all exactly 50 feet. They're slightly variable, but it's closer to 50 than 40 in most cases.
All right, Sharon Center. If we don't have sidewalks and the town adds gravel and grass on both sides of the street, will the new grassy area be town owned? I.e., can we walk on the grassy area and not worry about infringing upon a neighbor's lawn?
Well, I don't really know how to answer that. It would still be town property. The resident abutting the right-of-way would typically maintain that. And it would almost look like an extension of their lawn, unless there is some sort of swale or drainage structure in those areas that where the road had shrunk down some.
Anaya Jones, during construction, where would residents park while their section of road is being worked on?
Typically, what we do here is notify the residents when work is going to happen in front of their house. And if they need to get out of the driveway while work is being done, that's why you notify them so that they can move other places onto the street. And depending on what the work is, you might just be able to stay in your driveway and they can make accommodations for you to get out. And that's typically the only time that we ask you that you might want to move your vehicle if you need to get out sometime during construction is when you have an open trench right in front of the lot.
Usually the guys are pretty accommodating, you know. We're doing this project for everyone that lives in the neighborhood. So we want you to be happy with it. And we'll work with you certainly through construction to make sure you don't get trapped in there.
Yeah, and there will be a component too of a inspector on the site, and it'll probably be an Underwood Engineers person too, that helps coordinate neighborhood issues like that also.
Looks like Marshall Stephen had another question. 10 feet each side looks like will reduce the width of the street by about 40%. If there was a survey of residents done to see if this is acceptable, if so, can that data be shared?
Well, go ahead, Cole. We've only had these particular meetings.
Yeah, I mean, we did that question was not included in the survey that was done probably 2 years ago to identify the most pressing needs. It's something I guess I don't want to speak out of turn, Paul, but we did a survey to identify the most needs, you know, like who has a sump pump, what are your biggest concerns if we're going to do an infrastructure project here. Those were some of the questions that we asked on the last survey.
Yeah, and it's a given here at Public Works that if we were doing a roadway improvement out here, that the costs are significantly more, probably 40% using that figure right there, more if we had to continually reconstruct or upkeep that much more road. So there is a budgetary financial incentive, and there is also the stormwater improvements too that is a major funding component through the state for this project also. So we didn't go in with the idea that we are leaving the roads to a width of, in some cases 50 foot. No.
Okay. Anaya Jones, in earlier drafts, I remember the no sidewalk option having a wider road. Based on the drawing sent out, it looks like the road will be the same width with or without sidewalk. Curious about the thought process here. Thanks.
The previous draft showed a 24-foot. So in this one here, it was 24 feet where there was sidewalk. So we're actually, in this case, providing the 28 feet to be consistent across the board. And then the 28 feet where there weren't sidewalks, that's been consistent, I think, throughout. I'd have to check those slides. I think we've been pretty consistent with 28 feet as a compromise to balance the existing. It's a little wider than other roads, so it's a compromise to try to maintain the existing, not to have a huge impact, but also get it more consistent with, from a cost standpoint, with other roads in town, and also the stormwater management nutrient benefits of reduced pavement.
All right, Scott L. Any concern about illicit discharges to the sump pump subs, perhaps an information campaign about what is allowed?
Yeah, that's one of the concerns DES often raises. It's always a tough question to answer, because on one hand, the sump pumps don't belong in the sewer. On the other hand, the town has a illicit discharge program to detect should illicit discharges occur in the drainage system by monitoring the outfalls. So it ought to be detected in that case, but that's a great idea to, we've done informational flyers in the past to educate people to this, your sump pump discharge is now going to be going to the river. So we want to be careful about what we put into it.
Yeah, and we already have one of those pamphlets, Cole, that you can build upon that we used in a previous project for that information.
Okay, Joe Gardner, if Alt 1 and Alt 2 are up to the residents, how do we vote or voice our opinion?
I don't know. I was wondering that myself, and didn't know if Underwood or even Bob had an idea of how to best understand any consensus if there is any with this meeting here.
Well, it seems like we still have, sorry, Paul, but I was just saying, it seems like we have 25 people still in attendance. I mean, people could type.
I could also do a quick poll real quick if you want to see.
Let's go through the rest of the questions first, and then do that and see where it falls. Some people may still have some questions that they don't know which alternative that they would like until their question is answered.
Okay, so that was Joe. Done that. Looks like Mark Pittendray is just making a statement to propose keeping the roads at least 40 feet wide. Nicholas Metz, Will stop signs be added to the ladder rung streets? There are no signs currently.
Well, I'd look at any recommendations when you do the street stuff, but typically there would be a stop sign at those locations.
Yeah, and that's something, you know, Paul, we touched on too, that some of those details we can include in the next 60% meeting that we have, where we're looking at plans and looking at some of those details like mailboxes, stop signs, hydrants and whatnot.
Joe Gardner, will power / phone line poles be moved? Of that, I can go ahead and probably start with this one. I think given the width of the existing road that we're dealing with out there, I don't
That's a
envision-
utility.
I
I
don't
mean,
envision-
I would say, Dan, that's a utility question. You know, I mean,
yeah, I mean, my guess is, you know, I don't think there's gonna be a need to move many poles out there just based on what we have to work with, but I guess there's always a chance that it's possible. Sharon Center. At any point, will the water be turned off or sewer, and for how long?
well, that would be part of, I mean, we can talk about that more with the next phase where we've got the water sequencing plan. Usually there is you know, when we switch over from the old main to the new main, there usually is a temporary disruption in service, but we try to minimize that to the greatest extent possible. And that would be something that would be communicated well in advance so that everyone knows what would be occurring. I don't anticipate there to be disruptions to the sewer service. The drain, some pump connections that we're talking about adding are part of the drainage system. So we don't anticipate disruptions to the sewer service, but there will be, the intent is to have a new water main so that we can have a brand new development with brand new infrastructure. So there will be a crossover to the new main with your water service that goes to your house. Usually there is a little bit of a disruption there, but we're not talking days. It's I don't know, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, I think usually if there's any shutoffs to transition from to a temporary system, might be the couple hours at the most, and then it's back on. And then any sort of water service transfer from new to old is typically 15-20 minutes. They usually have everything dug in advance, and they give you a knock a couple hours beforehand or whatnot, or the night before if it's going to be the first one in the morning. And it's pretty quick. It's pretty quick, and it's usually pretty well coordinated between contractor personnel or engineer personnel on site.
Well, there's those kinds of shutdowns too, but then there's always the accidental breakage of a water main or something else, and that's something is a little different. So there could be a few hours if one of those happens unexpectedly because it wasn't pre-planned to break the utility. So that does happen during construction, though. So that is a possibility.
No, that's fair, Paul, because these are asbestos cement mains, so it is a possibility, and that's part of the reason why we're replacing them.
All right, Diane L asked if the utility poles will be moved, and I think we've addressed that. See here, Marshall Stephen, I think just has a request for future surveys to be made public. That way everyone can see the results and there's no need to include personally identifiable information. Thank you.
With that, Cole, in your basis design report, you have all the information and all the surveys that you had done for this project, right?
Yes, we have the surveys. I think they were done by SurveyMonkey. So those were covered in our previous presentations.
And if somebody wanted to see a copy of those, that's on the town website through your basis design report.
Yeah, I eliminated a lot of the hidden slides that we had from our previous ones. We took those out, but we had those in. I think the first presentation we did is we reviewed all the needs, and that was one of the things that we included to help identify the needs for the project.
All right, Kathleen Garofano asks if there can be more streetlights.
So typically we don't add additional streetlights. In fact, usually the emphasis is how to eliminate additional streetlights. But what we can do is for the 60% plans, can you guys call out where they are not only utility poles on your plans, but where there is the street light too, and we can have a review of those?
No problem.
Sharon Center asks, what are the downsides of roadway alternative number 1 with the sidewalk versus alternate number 2?
Well, one is with the sidewalk, there's more impervious area. So there's more, there's less benefit to the, I guess, pollutant loadings to the environment. That's one reason. Another one is that it in some ways limits the best management practices if it's defined there what can be done to help improve the stormwater. And then cost, I think there's a cost associated with the sidewalk for capital costs, as well as ongoing maintenance costs. Those are the big ones. I don't know, Paul, if you have any other things to add, but
Nope, I think you stated it correctly. And it's a closed neighborhood. You don't have a lot of through traffic cutting through here. So the volumes of traffic are a little lower than most streets. And it's an idea for the neighborhood of would you like the sidewalk around the perimeter or not, or just at the entrance?
so
Yeah.
one question for Bob maybe is that poll that you were talking about, Bob, is that anonymous? I think somebody else was
it would
bringing that up.
Yep.
And people can only vote once. Is that how it works?
Correct.
And the last, well, I guess Stephen Marshall just added a statement, but looks like the last question here. And then I'll read I'll read Marshall's statement. Kathleen asked, will we be receiving more hydrants in the neighborhood?
Well,
Go ahead,
sorry.
Cole.
Well, I was gonna say, that was some of the marching orders that we got from Paul. That would be, we'd work with the fire department, also talk about the valving. So that would be something that would be shown at the 60%. And we would want to make sure we're bringing in the fire department on those discussions. Sorry, Paul, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's a good answer too. Right now, the water main system underneath this neighborhood is not fully interconnected throughout the whole subdivision. I think we will have that situation with the new water line. And with that, as Cole said, there would be valving, and how would you appropriately flush those in the future to clean those out? So we'd want to make sure we had hydrants at those locations. And then most importantly too, we would have our fire department review the locations and see if they would want any additional ones. But our rule of thumb for hydrants are 500 feet apart.
Okay, then Marshall Stephen. I asked about the surveys because percent of respondents must ideally be close or equal to the number of residents impacted. Will this percent be made available if the site already has? Excellent, much appreciate you fielding all the questions. And then Scott L has a question. If the utility poles will not be moved, does that mean streetlights will then not actually light up the streets, but instead mostly grass?
I can maybe answer that survey question in terms of, I can let Paul know and maybe post it on the site if you wanted to, or you'll be able to see in the, if you're in this Zoom, how many people voted out of each option, and there's 26 people in there. So I wouldn't be able to do the math off the top of my head, but it'd be public so you guys can see.
I guess to answer the streetlight question, it would illuminate as much of the street as it currently illuminates. So it's just going to be a narrower pavement.
Yeah, but you can also, Cole, put arm extensions on the lights also. So if it needed to be done in a particular location, the extensions off the utility pole could be upgraded. Okay, so Bob,
Right.
can you walk us through how we could potentially do this here now?
Sure. So I'm gonna I just did this, so bear with me. I think it should work. I put up, it'll just be two options. Alternative one, sidewalks all around, I think is what that first one was, and then alternative two, sidewalk at the entry, and then it should pop up on people's screens in just a moment, and then I'll leave it up for folks to. You should all, if the attendees, at least the panelists, you guys don't see this, we don't vote, but you guys can just click one of those options. And I can see how many people have clicked it, so give it a couple seconds or so. For the one person on the phone who's listening to this meeting, I'm sorry, I don't know how the poll works for you, but I'm sure we can take your feedback another way somehow. Just a few more people haven't clicked it yet, so I'll give you guys a couple more seconds. You want to click whichever button you want. 19 of the 25 people, so any last takers before I end the poll there? Someone's getting an error message. Okay, so I'll apologize for that. I'm not sure what that is. I'm gonna in this poll, so I'll share the results. So you guys should all see this on your screens, I think. Paul, you guys should see this as well, I think. So it looks like there were 37%, 7 of the 19 people who did the poll are in favor of alternative 1, where 12 of the 19 people, 63%, were in favor of alternative 2. So there were a few people who didn't click it and someone had an error. So I apologize for those people if you weren't sure how to do it, but gives you an idea. So there's one additional person voting for alternative 1 there. So that'd be 8 out of 19, I guess, is what the person who had an error said. So. If you guys haven't have any questions about that, but
Okay, Bob, you've got a record of the attendees for this meeting, right?
yep, that's correct. Yep, I have a list of people who attended.
Okay, is it possible that we can leave a poll open for, say, another week and a half, whatever, to see if any other folks that could not attend tonight would want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, I could follow up with you and maybe create a little Google form that basically acts the same way as this poll in the webinar, and then folks could we could get that out to people who weren't able to attend and the folks who did attend this, if you want, and we can do something like that, surely.
Does that still work with your time frame, Cole, for this answer?
Yeah, no, Paul, we want people to be happy with where we land. So, whatever it takes.
All right, Bob, how about if we do try to figure out a way to put that onto the town website, that weigh-in for the residents could happen by the end of, say, not this Friday, but the Friday after. And that also gives time for the neighborhood to talk to their neighbors and tell them what's going on. So if anybody to weigh in.
Sure, yeah, we can have a video link to this presentation in case people want to rewatch any particular part of it. And we'll get that up on the town website.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, and I see a comment too that Mark P did not weigh in because he still wants to keep the street wider. All right, that's duly noted. So with that, right now the consensus was not the perimeter sidewalk, but just to keep it at the entrance. We'll hold out answering that fully until the end of next week. And unless there's any additional comments or questions, I think our work here is done. Very good. All right, Bob, anything else to close out the meeting?
That's it. I'll hit end webinar if we're all set to go.
All right. Thank you, Underwood, and thank you, residents, for your participation.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good
Thanks
night.
for having us.
You're welcome, Paul. Thank you, everybody.